Your brain might be secretly practicing your future without asking your permission, and it might care more about your long-term direction than your present comfort. I had a dream recently, and in the dream I was standing at a fork. Not a dramatic crossroads on some cinematic cliffside, just a sidewalk, a boring, ordinary decision. Go home or go to the place where I practice a skill I've been trying to get better at, and I chose home. I was tired, I was done. The conscious version of me made the call, and then someone I used to know, someone who is no longer alive, pulled up and offered me a ride. I got in the car, and this person did not take me home. They drove me to the place I had just decided not to go. Let that sit for a second. My brain manufactured a dead person, gave them a car, and used them to override a decision I had made. It vetoed me, it kidnapped me with a memory. And the destination wasn't random, it was the exact place where the skill lives. Once I arrived, a speech I had heard weeks ago on a podcast started playing in my head, except it was different. My brain was remixing it, editing it, trying to improve the argument, running the ideas through some filter I didn't consciously build, stress testing the logic while I slept, and when I woke up I thought, what kind of machine does that? We're going to meet a character I'll call the librarian, and we'll need to understand why the librarian keeps handing people books they didn't ask for. But before we get there, we have to sit with two things. First, the strange idea that forgetting might be a form of building. And second, that the people who walk through your dreams might not be visitors at all, but employees. Neither of those will make sense yet. That's fine. So what happened in my dream? Let me try to describe what I think is going on, and maybe together we can figure out if this is as wild as it felt. There's a theory, and it's just a theory, that sleep isn't rest. Not really, or at least it's not only rest, it might be more like a workshop. While you're unconscious, your brain appears to take everything you fed it during the day, during the week, during your entire life, and it runs simulations. It mixes, it recombines. It takes a conversation you had 6 years ago and lays it against a YouTube video you watched on Tuesday, and it checks whether the two of them pressed together produce something useful. And the materials it uses, they have no expiration date, they have no social boundaries. Your brain doesn't care that someone has passed away. It doesn't care that you broke up with someone or lost touch or that the relationship ended badly. If that person gave you a useful piece of data, an emotional texture, a behavioral pattern, a tone of voice, your brain files it. And in the workshop of sleep, it pulls that file whenever the simulation calls for it. The brain casts people in roles if it thinks they are the right actors for the scene. Think about that. Your brain is a casting director, and the pool of actors it draws from is everyone you've ever met, every voice you've ever heard, every character in every film you've watched, every narrator of every podcast you've let play in the background while you did the dishes. They're all in the pool. They're all available. I once heard about a chess player, and this might be one of those stories that's grown taller in the retelling, but supposedly this player dreamed an entire game, moved pieces in their sleep, woke up and realized they had found a line they'd never considered at the board. Now, whether that specific story is perfectly true almost doesn't matter, because the underlying mechanism seems real. The brain is stitching, it's pulling a thread from one pocket and a thread from another, and weaving something that didn't exist before. And here's where the librarian comes back. Imagine a librarian in some vast, dark building, and every experience you've ever had is a book on a shelf somewhere. During the day, you walk in and you pull the books you think you need. You're deliberate, you're logical, you grab How to Get Better at This Skill and Things My Mentor Told Me, and you sit down at a table and you study. But at night, when you leave, the librarian doesn't close the building. The librarian starts wandering, and the librarian has no respect for your filing system. The librarian pulls a book from the childhood memory section, and a book from the overheard conversation at a coffee shop section, and a book from the random documentary you half-watched in 2019 section. And the librarian starts cross-referencing, not because the librarian is random, but because the librarian can see connections between shelves that you, standing in one aisle, never could. That podcast speech my brain replayed and edited, that was the librarian pulling a book I had shelved weeks ago and laying it open next to the skill I'd been practicing. The person who drove me to the practice location, That was the librarian casting an actor from the biography section to play a role in tonight's simulation. The brain is a mashup machine, and it is ruthlessly, almost disturbingly creative about what it combines. Now here's where this gets interesting in a way that might actually change how you and I think about an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. If the brain can combine anything, if the workshop has access to every single thing you've ever encountered, then the quality of your raw materials matters enormously. This might seem obvious, but follow the thread. It would mean that every book you read isn't just information for the moment you're reading it. It's inventory. It's a new book for the librarian's shelves. Every conversation you have with a stranger. Every film you watch. Every podcast episode that plays while you're half asleep. All of it goes on the shelf. And at night, the mashup machine has access to all of it. Imagine two people. One reads widely, talks to people from different backgrounds, watches documentaries about things they don't understand, listens to podcasts about fields totally unrelated to their own. The other does none of that. Both are trying to solve the same problem. Both go to sleep. Whose brain has more to work with? Whose librarian has a richer collection to cross-reference? It's like the difference between a chef with a pantry full of spices from 6 continents and a chef with salt and pepper. Both are cooking. Both are creative. But one has more combinations available. And maybe this is why we sometimes wake up with the answer to something we weren't even working on. Maybe the brain found a connection between a story someone told us at a dinner party and a pattern we noticed on a walk and a line from a book we read in college. None of those things seemed related. We filed them on different shelves. But the librarian saw something. Then this is the turn I keep coming back to. Here's what I think might be the most important part. The brain isn't doing this randomly. There seems to be a compass, a direction, an arrow. If you spend your waking hours immersed in a skill, if you practice it, read about it, talk about it, watch people who are great at it, struggle with it, get frustrated by it, and then go to sleep, your brain appears to know what matters. The simulations it runs, the mashups it builds, the actors it casts, they seem to cluster around the thing you've been pointing at. My brain didn't send me to a random location in that dream. It sent me to the place where the skill lives. It didn't play a random podcast. It played the one relevant to what I've been trying to improve. The dream had a direction because my life had a direction. And maybe this suggests something uncomfortable. If you're scattered, if your attention is sprayed across 17 things, and you don't really care deeply about any one of them, your brain might not know where to aim. The workshop runs, but the librarian doesn't know which shelves to prioritize. The mashup machine combines things, but the combinations don't converge on anything. You wake up and the dream was just noise. So maybe the question is, what kind of library am I building while I'm awake? Every person you meet is a book on a shelf. Every conversation is raw material. Every film, every podcast, every walk through a neighborhood you've never visited, every awkward interaction, every moment of awe, every failure. It all goes on the shelves, and you don't get to choose how the mashup machine will use it. You don't get to decide which person you've met gets cast in which dream. You don't get to pick which podcast gets replayed at 3 a.m. and cross-referenced with a childhood memory. But you do get to choose what goes on the shelves in the first place. You get to choose to read the book, to have the conversation, to watch the thing that makes you uncomfortable, to listen to the person you disagree with, to walk through the unfamiliar place. Every one of those choices is an act of stocking the workshop. You're not just learning in the moment. You might be arming your future self with a tool it doesn't even know it needs yet. And you get to choose the arrow, the direction, what you spend your days doing, thinking about, caring about, struggling with. That's the signal your brain reads. That's how the librarian knows which cross-references to prioritize. Your life, the way you actually live it, the hours you actually spend, is the arrow, and the brain follows the arrow. There's a version of you asleep right now in some future night, and that sleeping version is going to run a simulation that solves something you can't solve today. But it will only work if you, the waking version, gave it something to work with and pointed it somewhere worth going. So stock the shelves, point the arrow, and then maybe let the librarian do what it does best, which is find the connection you never would have found on your own, using people and memories and ideas you forgot you ever had. They're all still in there, and they're not done working for you yet.